Welcome to another episode of Edge Grip Podcast. We have a very special episode today. Nabil, how we always kind of complain that motorcycles are going away and Gen Z doesn't ride, and we have to bring people back to motorcycling. And along comes EICMA, and all of a sudden everybody's got a new bike. So I think the news about motorcycles being dead are a little bit premature. And if you pay attention to the market, you'd see that there's maybe 20 or 30 new models that they just presented, which is unbelievable. And we wanted to take an episode and just go over all the new models that are in the market. So if you are in the market for a new motorcycle, stick around. Because we're going to have pretty good information for you. And you know us, we don't do things halfway. So we got a real expert today. We got maybe, I want to say, the fastest journalist around. Is that an accurate description? I mean, he does hold the record for Pikes Peak. And that record, I don't think will ever be broken because they don't race motorcycles over there anymore. But if you're just going by the facts, this is the fastest journalist on Earth. So his name's Rennie Scaysbrook. Hi, Rennie.
Yeah, Scaysbrook. I'll take that intro. That was quite nice. But I don't think I'm the fastest guy, but I'll take it anyway. Thanks, mate.
So
Thanks for joining us, Rennie.
Yeah. So Rennie is not only the road test editor at Cycle News, which I hope you guys read because it's really the best, I think, free content out there.
Yep.
So
yeah, we've been free for since we went PDF magazines back in 2010. Plus, there's the website and all that stuff. So yeah, we're kept busy. I can tell you that.
And not only that, Rennie is a journalist. He also, like I said, did Pikes Peak, which he set the record. But he also did the Isle of Man TT. And you compete also in CVMA, right?
Yeah, I do. But maybe my racing days might be coming to an end. I don't know. But I've been very lucky to, especially since I've been in the States, I've been in America since 2015, and I've been presented with an incredible amount of opportunities where I've got to do some really, really cool things. And, the journalism side of things has really sort of put me in the right place at the right time. So, yeah, I managed to get 2 Isle of Man TTs under my belt this year and last year. This year on a BMW S1000 RR and last year on a GSXR 600 Suzuki. It's funny. After this year, my friend in Australia, I've got to ring him up just to tell him that I was all good and everything. He says, how does it feel to know that everything else you do for the rest of your life is going to suck? So, unfortunately, it wasn't quite true, but he's pretty close to the money. He's nothing like riding a big bike at the Isle of Man, I can tell you that.
And
we got to talk a little bit about the Isle of Man because you have to be completely insane to do that race.
Oh yeah, we talked to Jeremy Toy about it, and he gave us the inside scoop of what's going on there.
Well, Jeremy was my crew chief at Pikes Peak, so I know, and I was on the phone to Jeremy every other day at the Isle of Man, trying to work through changes and all that kind of stuff, and trying to make the bike work. And but yeah, the Pikes Peak is a very different race. Obviously, with it being going up the mountain, most of the cambers are on, but most of the corners are on camber. So you can kind of almost hit them almost like a berm in motocross in some ways. But whereas the Isle of Man, it's John McGuinness calls Pikes Peak a car park, and he's not wrong.
I mean, how do you set up a bike for a course like that? You get long straights, and you get these tight things, and you have jumps and walls and houses to avoid.
Really, I learned a lot so the stuff I learned at Pikes Peak, a lot of it transitioned to the Isle of Man in terms of setup, because when I first went to Pikes Peak, I had all my bikes really stiff. And over the years, we just gradually made them softer and softer and softer and turned them much more into real road bikes. And by the time I raced the Aprilia there, it basically was a street bike. Like there were, we revalve the fork and shock and things like that, but it was super soft. Like if you took it to Chuckwalla or somewhere like that, it'd be awful. But when I went to the Isle of Man, it was almost like halfway in between, because you had to set it up for high speed. You had to make sure it was good over really, really sharp, awful bumps down something like the Solby Straight, which is the fastest part of the circuit. You've got to make sure that the bike is stable and allows the thing to work through the stroke of the suspension while still maintaining like a straight line, if you know what I mean, because there's so many bumps that you can basically pack the shock down as you're going over, because you're putting all that horsepower through the tire and through the chain, and the shock's working as hard as it can. So you want to make sure that you use the full range of the shock. So the bike was almost like a halfway setup between a full, like short circuit street bike style, where it's super stiff and but you needed to be able to make sure the suspension worked through a stroke. But they're not that different to really like what you have at a short circuit style. I mean, like the guys at the front, like Peter Hickman and that, I mean, yeah, they are a little bit different, but they're not that different to what they're running in British Superbike. It's not like Pikes Peak, where it was a fair bit different to what we would normally run. But yeah, it was that the TT throws every possible style of riding at you in terms of road racing, and certainly every style of corner, the fastest straight you'll ever do, the fastest corners you'll ever do, the bumpiest corners you'll ever do. It's literally everything. The slowest corners you'll ever do. Like, I mean, that's another thing. Like you come through, you get down to Quarterbridge after going through down Bray Hill, over Aggosley, and that's you. Once you get out of the last corner, you are flat out until you hit Quarterbridge. So you don't back off for 3 miles, and you're going downhill, uphill, over jumps, and the bike's got to. You kind of ride it like a dirt bike, really. Like if you ever see the guys going over St. Ninian's Crossroads, they're out of the seat. Your ass is out of the seat, so the bike can just move and bounce around underneath you, and you just hang on tight and just point the thing in the right direction and hold on. But yeah, you'll never get an adrenaline rush like it in your life. It's the greatest thing in the world.
All right, so you went a second time, huh?
I'd go a third time if I could. I mean, I haven't ruled out going back next year, but the one thing I noticed with being on a superbike is that level now is really high, like really, really high. When you're racing against Peter Hickman, Josh Brooks, Dean Harrison, whoever else, Connor Cummins, David Johnson, Michael Dunlop, yeah, geez. You realize your level on the pecking order, and I was definitely down the bottom feeding sort of level. They were the sharks and I was the shrimp sort of thing. So yeah, but the good thing about a TT is that you are only racing the clock. You're not racing them, so that you can gauge them, and it's just like picking the next guy off and pick the next guy off, and so it does become almost a little bit safer in a way, because it's just you versus yourself for the most part. If you see somebody on track, that means, or if you're catching a guy on track, that means you're going good, keep going. If you get caught, it means you're not going good, keep going. And so, but yeah, I'd love to go back. It'll always hold a special place in my heart after, my father raced it 3 times, and I grew up with photos of TT races and all that stuff in the garage and in the house, and I always wanted to do it. Never thought I would get the chance, and I made my TT debut when I was 39. So it's never too late to get the dream going. And geez, I wish I did it 10 years ago, because I probably would have moved to the UK and become a TT racer. But yeah, I got 2 more. If I never get to do it again, then that's cool. I got 2 more TTs than I ever thought I would. So got to be happy with that.
I think,
yeah, and that's one of the places I think where just participating is a huge achievement, and finishing it, and not finishing 2 days after everybody else is just an immense credit to the rider.
Well, they this year, not this year, last year, they limited the amount of entries that you could go. There used to be like 80 plus entries, and there was a big problem with the differences between the fast guys and the slow guys. So people really, you should never get lapped at the TT. If you're getting lapped at the TT, there's something wrong with you, because there's 37 miles between you and the fastest guy if you're at the back. So if you're getting lapped, you're too slow. And a lot of guys so many people getting lapped. And so they realized how dangerous it was. Closing speeds between those guys were enormous. So last year, there was 50 riders limited in the superbike class and 60 in the super sport. And you had to, same like a Moto America race, you've got to qualify within 110%. And so as long as you're within that range, you should be pretty good to go. Then it is a good feeling to see the end of it. See the checkered flag at the end of it. That adrenaline rush. That's the thing. It's not a great amount of fun when you're doing it. It's like you're just so focused on trying to make sure the bike stays in the straight line. But once you get off and you take the helmet off and you can let it all sink in, that's when it's a good feeling.
Unbelievable, yeah. And I bet how long is the race? It's a couple of hours, right?
Yeah, the big ones are the superbike and the senior, and they're 6 laps. They're about an hour, a bit over an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes. I think first to last is about 15 minutes difference. I don't know exactly. But the super sport and the super sport's 4-lappers, 2 4-lap races. The super stock is 2 3-lap races. So the 3-lap races are just sprint races, like the sprint races with a pit stop, and they're just about an hour's long, and it feels like 5 minutes. I'm not kidding. Like you'll come in after, because you come in after your first lap, fill up, and then bang, you're out, because that way you get a flying lap instead of it being coming out of the pits and then having to get up to speed. You do first lap, you do your pit stop, and then you go flying lap in the second coming out of pits in the second lap, and then your last lap is a flying lap. And that's the good one. That's when you hold the thing wide open from the last corner to quarter bridge, and that's a hell of a feeling.
How long did it take you to study the course?
I'd known it for a long time because of my history, I guess, and my interest in the race, and I knew a lot of the spots in the track, but I really started fully because, like, when I learned Pikes Peak, I learned it on YouTube and PlayStation, and I did the same thing with the TT. When I went over to the TT in 2019 to do because when you're a first timer, you have to go over there on your own dime to do rookie orientation laps. And you're in a car for a week, and especially if you don't live in the UK where you can't just hop back and forth. So I was coming from California, it's a bit difficult, but I went there for a week and I just got in a car and sun up to sundown, and then an hour in the darkness, just around and around and around. And I think I got 28 or 29 laps in that week, which is still not much. But then I'd watch the YouTube videos that night. I'd come back to California, and then I'd be on the PlayStation. I always did a thing where it was watch a lap, play a lap, watch a lap. And the next day would be play a lap, watch a lap, play a lap, and just alternate between those. And that was an hour every day for, 8-9 months. And I knew exactly where I was going. But the difference is not so much, same with Pikes Peak, it's not so much where it's going. It's all the little nuances, like little camber changes and the bumps and where a little gutter sticks out here and where a tree hedge is over there, and just all these things. But, like Glenn Irwin said it best when he was there, because he was a rookie the same year I was, where he goes, look, man, if there's 37 miles and you have to learn it with a gun to your head, you'll learn it. And, he's exactly right. It's amazing what the human brain can take in if it needs to
survive.
Yeah, that's quite impressive. That's one thing is memorizing a 2.5 or 3 mile track, and you're doing 30, 40 laps on it, and one is 40 miles.
Yeah, you can't go there unless you know what you do, know where you're going. Same with any street race, really, or any racetrack, let's be honest. But especially there, the consequences are so big. If you do screw it up, you run wide anywhere, and you could end up in someone's kitchen. So you really got to be careful. And just Milky Quayle, I don't know if you know Milky, but he's the basically the guy who gives the green light to the rookies. So you have to do your laps with Milky, and he basically quizzes you in the car, like, what's coming up here? Okay, what's this name? And it's a bit of an informal test, but it's the acid test kind of thing. And he always explained it to me. Riding the TT course is like having listening to classical music with a bottle of water in your hands. Yeah, you want to just like cradle a bottle of water and have that nice flow of water, and not have the water smash into every side of the bottle, and just have the classical music playing in the background and just join the dots. That's all it is. It's just join the dots. And once you've got the point where the dots can be joined, then you can go, okay, I can go a little bit faster here. I could brake a little bit harder there. The big thing with the TT is, and like any road racing, but especially the Isle of Man, because it is so fast and straights are so long, it's all about exit speed on the corners. Like get the thing set up so you can get as much drive as possible to maximize your top speed, because it can make a difference of 10, 15 mile an hour at the end of it, which is light years.
So between that and Pikes Peak, if you could do one again, which one?
TT without a doubt, no doubt. Like Pikes Peak was bloody good fun. Let me be honest. Like if I'd never done the Isle of Man, I would have been completely happy just to have signed off at Pikes Peak, because it's pretty rare that you get a national park closed down on your Tuono and they say, right, go for it. I'm like, great. But there's just nothing like the Isle of Man. Like everything about the thing, from the racetrack itself to the way that, because it is motorcycle island for 2 weeks. Like everywhere you go, there's bikes. You're not a sideshow to the cars like you are at Pikes Peak. Like every cafe you go to, there's a bike in the cafe. There's TT posters everywhere. There's just, and particularly if you walk around with that competitor competitor band on your wrist, you just get the keys to the city. It's bloody amazing. Like you get treated like a rock star. It's crazy. But just in terms of sheer adrenaline, there's just nothing like TT. It's just completely on a separate level to anything else I've ever done.
And between all that, you found time to write a children's book?
Yeah, I've actually nearly finished the second. The second one's actually on the Isle of Man, funnily enough, on the 1992 senior TT between Steve Hislop and Carl Fogarty. They were changed it's called Race of the Titans, and should be out the next couple of months, in the process of getting designed. But yeah, the first book was the Big Book of Motorbikes. It was a bit more of a COVID project than anything. Everyone was kind of sitting on their hands doing nothing and had a bit of time. So I always knew that, like, just because at the time my son was 3, and every time I would read him a bike book, he would always be happy. And I was asking, and I looked and said, all these bike books are rubbish. I could do better ones than this. And so I wrote one, just knocked it out quickly. But then it's like anything, the actual writing part is probably the quickest part, and then it's all the development. And it was a bit of an exercise in self-publishing and learning how the whole thing works. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. Like it still continues to sell on Amazon. It's always been there. So we got a colouring in book as well that we made to go with it, and it's been great. I still get messages every now and then from parents around the world that say they bought it for their kid. It is sold everywhere. Like I've had people from India, from Brazil, South Africa, Australia, all over the US, Mexico, like everywhere. And I was like, wow, this really did reach a lot of people. And I guess that's the reach of Amazon more than anything. But yeah, people seem to love it. And if it gets kids riding, that was honest to God, that was the whole reason I did it. Like it hasn't made any money. It's paid for itself, but that's about it. But the whole point was to get people excited about riding bikes again, because I care a lot about this, activity. It's become my life. That's how I make my money, and I want to make sure it continues.
Yeah, we always say it's important to make sure we're not the last generation that rides motorcycles, but you actually did something about it.
Hopefully it made a little difference. We'll see.
Yeah. Did any of the parents that bought the book for their kids say, "I will let them ride a motorcycle"?
Yeah, they did. Yeah. We actually had a couple of people that a couple of people got gifted the book by motorcycle friends to to the families who didn't ride, and then all the kids who were like, I want a bike, I want a bike, I want a bike. And yeah, they've actually got out and bought them, little Kiwis and that kind of stuff. And I'm like, yes, another one infected. All right.
Yeah, actually, you're the only hero of that generation. I don't know anybody else who's doing anything to get kids to like motorcycles and actually parents to be convinced that this is an activity that, you can kill yourself crossing the street. It's not like
totally. I mean, like the world's wrapped in,
right.
World's wrapped in cotton wool these days. And I mean, like I look at my own boy, and he's got a couple of little. So he's got a Stasic, and he's riding around on one of those Kawasaki electrodes. And I mean, God, the ability for kids to be able to ride these days with electric bikes, especially, is just so far out from what I grew up in, where like you had to put the bike in the trailer and you go out to the middle of nowhere and have a ride. Whereas now, like, I mean, he rides that thing almost every day. He rides to school like that, and we've got a little sort of dirt side thing on a garden, and he sort of makes a little track and rides up and down it, and he actually likes going to school, which I'm all for. Like, I mean, it's such a good bonding exercise between parents and kids that I think a part of that gets overlooked. A lot of people get too freaked out in terms of the danger and the possibility of getting hurt and all that stuff, but they don't see the good of what it could do for father-son, father-daughter, mother-son, mother-daughter, whatever, entire family relationships. It's kind of it's a good thing that keeps them all together.
Yeah, that's where I found dirt tracks attract more family-like activities. Like whenever I go there, there's always campers and the families are all out there together. And you go to the actual racetrack, road racing, and you don't see that very much. It's usually people on their own doing their thing, and then they'll meet their family after the day is over.
Yeah, whereas I think it's a lot more serious too in road racing. So it's, at least with dirt track, you can rock up there with a dirt bike in the back and just go for it. Whereas there's a lot of effort that goes into road racing. I mean, even just to do it at the basic bottom level is still an enormous exercise, and there's a lot of investment involved. Whereas go to dirt track, you throw a couple of wheels on it and off you go.
Yep, absolutely. And it's much less intimidating. The bikes are lighter. You can get a small one. You fall. It's not a hard surface typically. So that's a very good point.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to freak kids out either. Like, I mean, if you want to race the next Marc Marquez, go for it. But like, kids have got to want to do it. Like there's no point in putting all this investment into something in the hope that they're going to do it, and then when they see all this pressure come on them, they're like, I don't want to do this. I mean, like a friend of mine who lives just a couple of doors down, like he bought his kid a KTM 50, like he had a little Kiwi 50. He was like, cool, we're going to go race it. So he bought his kid one of those SX 50s, and he hated it. Like he was like, this sucks. Like I don't want to be around this. And then he went. Then he saw his mum had a TTR 125. He goes, let me try that. And so he grabbed that and goes, that's so much more fun. So they got rid of the KTM, bought him a TTR 125, and they just go out to Lake Elsinore and just bash into each other and laugh their heads off. And he's clearly not a racer, doesn't want to be a racer, wants to go and ride bikes. And at the end of the day, that's whether you race or not, or whatever it is that you do. As long as you're going out for a ride, that's all I care about.
Yep, 100%. So we did this to talk bikes, actually. And as usual, I got us on a tangent, and I could see Gal cringing and saying, we're going to run out of time here.
No, we're not.
So we probably should get back to that, right?
We got time. I have a really big SD card.
All right, good.
Excellent.
Well, I guess question number one, as a sequitur, how was riding the BMW in the TT?
It was fantastic. It was a bit difficult in terms of very difficult in terms of setup, because I didn't get on the bike until the last day of practice. I don't know if you know the story, but I was originally supposed to ride for a Honda team, and we had a number of issues with the bike, and I basically said, I'm not riding this thing. It's not worth, ending up as a bloody hood ornament on some dude's driveway. And then I managed to, by the grace of God, get a ride on a BMW team at the last minute. So that last was all about just getting the bike qualified, and all the setup changes and everything we had to do were during the races themselves. So like couldn't do any practice, but beside the point, it was a fantastic bike. It wasn't very heavily breathed on at all. Like, it had 208 horsepower at the wheel, and but it had an exhaust and basically a tune, and that was it. It was like the most stock of super stock bikes you could get. I mean, when you consider something like Peter Hickman's bike with pumping north of 240, 250 horsepower, mine was plenty fast for me, at least for not having the experience with the bike. But it was really good, really, really nice and comfortable, and very easy to ride over a long period of time. Didn't wear you out too much, but it was really, really good fun.
And that was the RR, not the M, right?
Yeah. It was a 2018 double R it had flashed ECU from Alpha Technic, and had an exhaust on it. Had kit by Tubo suspension, which is the first time I've ever ridden a Tubo stuff. It was a little bit strange feeling, but got a head around it eventually. And that was it. And some body work that made it look like Wayne Rainey's Yamaha, and that was it. There was actually the spare bike for the teams who I joined Team's main rider, and they had a new CBR 1000 that they were racing. So this bike was literally just sitting there in the corner and waiting for a rider, and I turned up at the last minute and off we went. I nicknamed it the Big Red Cadillac. It's a great bike.
So
I guess maybe we can start with the leader bikes, Gal. What do you think?
So the reason we're recording this episode, and we're doing it a different episode with you, Rennie, about your life. The reason why we asked you to come on the podcast is to talk about all the new models that all of a sudden just popped up. We have a list of at least, I think, 20 something bikes that are brand new for 2024, and it all came out of nowhere. We thought the industry is winding down a little. We didn't see a lot of new models in the last 4 years. The stuff we saw was, I think, mainly Italian, and all of a sudden we're watching EICMA, and we got all this huge list of motorcycles. So we figured we'll get the best journalists around to talk about those motorcycles, because you rode on some, and you did the research on some, and you're really way more qualified than anybody else to talk about all those new motorcycles that have come out. So we made a list, and
put me on a pedestal here, man.
and then we'll knock you down in Chuckwalla.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
Yep.
I'm just kidding. And we had a list, and we went over it, and you said, okay, those are coming into the US, those are not coming into the US. So maybe we can go over that list and just talk a little bit about every motorcycle, and some of them you rode, and then we can give people a feeling of what's out there and what's coming out there.
Yep, sure, let's do it.
So we started with Suzuki, and Suzuki.
What a coincidence!
What a coincidence that one of us has two Suzukis. And it's Suzuki, as far as I'm concerned. They keep, I keep hope alive because I'm a Gixxer guy.
We all keep hope alive. We wish they would do something about it.
Yeah, but in a tradition of Yamaha calling R7 an R7, which it's not, Suzuki came up with the GSX 8R. They just moved the R to the side.
Yeah. Clever naming there.
Yeah. And it's now a parallel twin. So what do you know about that bike?
Well, I rode the naked bike version of it in France earlier this year. GSX 8, I think it is. 8S. Yeah, GSX 8S. And it was actually not a bad bike. Like, it's not as hard edged as something like say your Aprilia Tuono 660 or something like that. Or I guess it's fairly close to an MT-07 Yamaha in terms of spec and price and all that stuff. But it's got a good little engine on it. It's made, like, this is the great thing about Suzuki's is even though they are, it is incredibly frustrating how the rate of change at which happens at Suzuki, if it ever happens. What you do get is always really, really good quality, and that's been a hallmark of Suzuki now for so long. I wish they would bring out a new GX1000, but there we go. So the GSX-8R is basically that bike where the 8S, but with bodywork. There's not much difference to it. It's got a bit of an odd shaped fairing, I got to say. It's not one of those terribly aesthetically pleasing looking fairings. Like, how, like, when the Ninja 650 and that came out, it almost looked like it was a ZX6 that was missing a chromosome or something. Whereas and that's kind of been the way that these twin bikes have sort of evolved. They're not as sporty, which I guess is by design. They don't look as sporty because they're not as sporty. I'm very interested to see what the race kit's going to look like, and I'm pretty certain that thing's going to get homologated for Moto America Twins Cup racing in some way or another, because you can bet your bottom dollar that the M4 team's going to want to run those things at some point, probably not next year, but maybe the year after. I mean, they were running that SV650, which is 23 years old now, for a long time, which was actually a pretty good bike, but those things just cost insane levels of money, which I completely disagree with. Anyway, I digress. So 8R, not much different to the 8S, very much just throw some, it's not full clip-on handlebars, like raised clip-ons that sit on the top of triple clamp. It's a sporty-ish bike. Definitely going to be a good platform for Twins Cup racing soon enough.
And probably also city riding, right? If someone wants to commute.
Yeah. I mean, you can almost look at it in terms of like a higher bar clip-on naked bike. So with bodywork, we should say. It's kind of like the best of both worlds, in a way. And that's been a bit of a flavor now for quite some time, especially, again, I go back to the Ninja 650. That's the perfect example of it. Even the RS 660, that's also not quite as sporty as what you would originally think it would be for the Aprilia. But yeah, it's going to be a good little thing, actually. Like, this seems to be more the way that the sports bikes are getting their development, because they've realized now that you just couldn't. No one's building 600cc 4 cylinders anymore. At least not in Europe, they're not selling them. I mean, Honda's brought out that new 600RR, which we're not getting, unfortunately. But there's a lot of development going into these things because you can make them cheap. You can get them through most of the world emission laws. That's the biggest thing with motorcycles now, bar none, is getting them through emissions. Doesn't matter whether it's a bloody 1000cc superbike or a 250cc loaner. They've all got to get through Euro 5 emissions. And that's honestly a lot of the reason why so many of these bikes are just gradually creeping up in capacity, because it's a smaller motorcycle engine is harder to get through emissions than a bigger one. And that's just the facts of it.
Yeah, I
thought they did a super sport like that. I didn't think it sold very well.
Yeah, that's a bit of an anomaly, the Ducati Super Sport. I remember riding it back in, 6-7 years ago now.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it wasn't a bad bike. It was just not. I think it kind of missed the mark in terms of what the Ducati riders like. They really have pigeonholed themselves a fair bit in the last few years. If you take out the Scrambler line and things like that, they've really become very hard edge, a bit more KTM-like in their, super bikes and 180 horsepower adventure bikes and, things like that new Super Mono, that fantastic looking 696 or whatever it is, Super Mono Ducati thing. I cannot wait to ride that thing. That's going to be awesome. But again, it's a hard edge, sporty kind of thing. And that's kind of what that's their direction. So I don't think that Super Sport bike maybe fit the bill quite as much as what they were as what they were hoping. And I think the proof's in the pudding. Like, I've never seen one on the street ever. So, yeah, usually you get to see one or two of them occasionally, but I haven't seen one at all.
Yeah, I thought they built them just to get new riders in the fold with kind of not these ultra powerful bikes. And I guess the brand just doesn't attract these people.
Well, I think too. It's like I know a lot of the guys at Ducati quite well, and especially in Italy. And I think what they realized is that Ducati is the Ferrari of motorcycles. Let's be honest. And like, you don't start off learning in a Ferrari. Like, you graduate to a Ferrari, and I think that's what they've done. I mean, I guess maybe it's take that with a bit of a grain of salt, because you are taking things like scramblers and that kind of stuff, and that's just completely separate. But in terms of sporty motorcycles, like, there's not much point in coming out with really, really small capacity or smaller, sportier versions of motorcycles when you've got a Panigale V4R that pumps out 200 horsepower and costs you $50,000 or whatever it is that they cost. So, yeah, I think they kind of realize that their market is the affluent market that have been riding for a while, and they know, okay, I want a Ducati because I've seen Alvaro Bautista, wax everybody on it's the fastest superbike in the world. That's what I want. And that's kind of what I think they're leaning towards these days.
I realized that they're more like Ferrari when I saw those pictures on the internet of the Panigale burnt to a crisp. And I was like, that's exactly what Ferraris do on hot days.
Yeah, you have good insurance, man.
And then going back to Suzuki, they're just toying with me now because they're putting the Gixxer engine into what is it called, a crossover?
Yeah, so this GSX-S 1000 GX Plus, which is just the worst bloody name. I don't get it. I don't understand why they have to make it so difficult. That's going to be a really good bike. I'm really pumped to see that. I mean, the Gixxer 1000 engine, regardless of the fact that it's 900 years old, is still a very good engine. 2017, I think, was the last iteration that we had come out, but it's strong as houses. It's a solid engine, and really well suited to something like the almost like a BMW S1000 XR kind of style. I guess you could argue the same thing with the Multistrada V4S, similar to that regard. Maybe not quite, because the Silverite doesn't run 17-inch wheels, but that's going to be quite a good bike. It's quite expensive for a Suzuki as well. I think it's about 19 grand, which when you have a look through the range, that's definitely right up there for Suzuki. But it also comes out with Suzuki's first go at electronic suspension, which that's a big thing for Suzuki. They've been incredibly reluctant to jump on that bandwagon for a really, really long time, and they've relied on their suppliers, and I think it's KYB really that they get most of their stuff out of. But for them to jump on the electronic bandwagon, it's about time, because everyone else did it a long time ago. But I have a feeling that one's going to be a really, really good bike this year.
Is it really that much of a difference that Skyhook suspension versus just get the suspension right to begin with?
Look, not really, honestly. But the advantage with that stuff is that you can change it, and as long as you stay within the preset parameters, especially when you get on like a Ducati Skyhawk suspension or something like that stuff's really good. Especially for street stuff. I mean, I actually raced an R1 earlier this year that still had the base electronic suspension in it. That was pretty good. Like, I raced at Chuckwalla, and I think it was doing like 47s or something on it at Chuckwalla, where it was still in electronic mode. And it was, it definitely felt weird, but it's not bad. That's using it at the extreme end of the scale. Whereas roads, that we all ride on are filled with potholes. They've got speed bumps. They've got cracky braking surfaces. They've got beautifully smooth tarmac. They've got, rocks that fall down off the side of the road or whatever it may be. So electronic suspension works much better in that regard, in that it's adaptable to the conditions. If you get your perfectly tuned, absolutely dialed suspension, then analog suspension, then look, it's going to be good for 90% of the time, but you're not going to be able to change it on the fly. I mean, the last couple of years, I've actually started to use electronic suspension for what it is much more, especially with off-road stuff, with big maxi adventure bikes like the Multistrada Rally, the Super Adventure 1290, all that stuff. Like, it really does make a big difference. So, I think it's horses for courses, really. If you're an analog guy, you'll probably never get convinced, but most of the time, I mean, you kind of got to get on board because all the big bikes are all going this way now, and it just allows people to have a bit more choice in how their bike rides, which I think is probably a good thing.
I was talking to Zemke, who rides a V4S at the track,
yeah,
and surprisingly, he gave the same opinion as you. He said, it's fine.
Yeah,
I don't want to go back to analog. I could race this bike the way it is, pretty much off the factory floor. And he had really good things to say about the electronic suspension and the way it works. A lot of purists go like, no, you got to have your suspension, know what it's going to do. Most people can't even give the right feedback to tune their suspension.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right.
For them.
I mean, Zemke's so bloody fast, he could ride a fridge quickly. But the way the electronic suspension is now, I mean, I remember, this is telling me how long I've been doing this job. Like, I remember back when BMW released the HP4 race back in 2012, which was the first real kind of semi-active suspension on a sports bike that I can remember. Yeah, I think it was. Everyone still at the time was still using analog suspension, and it was awful. Like, it didn't know where it was half the time. I mean, I shouldn't say awful. It was not anywhere near as good as well set up analog suspension. And I still think, honestly, like, a good set of analog forks when you're racing a motorcycle is still the way to go. Even though Zemke could ride that thing in a race tomorrow, no problem. I'm sure, like, if he was given a really nice set of factory race forks versus electronic forks, he's still going to go with the factory race forks. But that's not to say that what is out now is not really bloody good. It's taken huge leaps, and especially since IMUs came in, which was sort of 6-7 years ago now when we started seeing the first IMUs. I mean, no, more than that. It was it's funny. Aprilia actually
2011
technically had the first IMU in 2012 or 13, I think it was, but never said anything about it. And Yamaha was the first one that actually walked out and said, we have a quote-unquote IMU in the 2015 R1. So when all that stuff started happening and the more development came on and the suspension companies got behind how this system actually works, I mean, the suspension quality just went through the roof. So you can jump on a V4S, no problem. You go race it in your club race tomorrow and you'll be totally fine.
Yeah, before that, I remember they had the Buzaz systems that were just wheel speed sensors.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, all that stuff, that's all precursor now to what the IMU is capable of. I mean, without that little thing is, I mean, I would argue that the IMU is the biggest technological breakthrough that motorcycles have had for decades. It's just allowed, especially in terms of ABS, cornering ABS, that kind of, and cornering traction control, like those three things have become mainstays now in high quality motorcycles, and they've probably saved a bunch of lives that we're never going to hear of.
Yeah,
I'm a little skeptical, and I'm not at that level of speed anyway, but like the cornering ABS, I mean, straight line ABS scared the heck out of me the first time I really felt it, and I thought the bike was going to stop, and it didn't. And that was actually in Australia at Phillip Island on an S1000RR.
Oh, yeah.
Like at the end of that front straight, and I'm hitting the brakes a little harder than I should, and all of a sudden it kind of released a little bit, and it is a scary moment. So I can only imagine in the middle of a corner.
Yeah, I should reiterate that ABS is still you're much better to have ABS on the road than the racetrack. Like I would never race with ABS like that, like, because the braking forces required, especially if you're running slick tires, braking forces required are much bigger than what an ABS system is prepared to give you. I did a test with Bosch a number of years ago, 8-9 years ago now, when IMUs came out on the Multistrada, the first time they came out on Multistradas, and we went out to Bosch out in Michigan, and we did all these different tests. And the best part is it rained like absolutely pissed down, which normally would be the worst thing, but for an ABS test was the best. You can actually find the video. It's on Cycle News somewhere back in the analogs of our YouTube channel. But they were telling me, get on the throttle as hard as you want, get on the brakes as hard as you want while you're cranked over. And I'm like, okay. And I'm just like, okay, here comes a broken collarbone. And I remember going in pissing down rain. Like I'd come around the corner, full on the throttle as hard as I could, cranked it in, and then just full handful of front brake. And I'm just waiting for the thing to control. And it didn't stand itself upright. It just continued on its line, and it just stopped. And I was like, oh, holy crap, it actually does work. And that was on a multi-strike. So I think with sports braking and that, sports bikes, you got to be, default back to a more rider skill. But as far as big tourers go, big adventure bikes, sports naked bikes, all that kind of stuff, that stuff, like cornering ABS is an absolute game changer.
I actually think I've read that article, because weren't you the one who said you couldn't crash this bike even if you wanted to?
Probably, which was a fairly silly thing to say.
I'm like, well, but it gives you an idea of how effective the system is.
I mean, you had to try hard to crash the thing. And that was, God honest truth. Like, I was doing stuff, like I was fully prepared to snap my collarbones. Like, I fully thought I was going to go down. I was younger at the time, so I was just like, screw it. And the system worked. And the big difference, though, now with ABS, we're kind of going fairly off tangent here, but like big difference with ABS now, especially, is how good it is off-road. That's where I guess that comes from wet weather development, off-road development, things like that. But nowadays, like, time was where you would switch all ABS off on off-road, unless you're trying to bloody beat Ken Roxon. Like, don't really need to. If you're just cruising along on fire trails and you're going for a ride in the mountains in Colorado, like, leave it on. Like, especially leave it on the front. Maybe take it off on the rear, but for sure leave it on the front. There's no need not to. It's that good now.
It actually saved me once. I was making a left turn on an intersection. Car blows the red light coming the other way, and there was a little dust on the intersection. So I hit the brake a little harder than I should, and I felt the front sliding, and then it caught it. And all of a sudden, I'm still upright. And like, if there was no ABS, I would have eaten the dirt. No question about it.
Yeah. I remember the first time I ever tried ABS as a bike journey was in 2008 on a CB 1000 or CB 1100 Honda back in Australia. And they were saying, just give it a try. And I went, okay. So I went down this hill at about 120k an hour, which is at about 65 mile an hour or so. I just went, grab, and I just leaped on the front end. The pads just went clang, 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 clang. The whole bike just shook its head off. And it was just like, it was terrifying. But very, very pre-IMU ABS systems, which hadn't had a lot of development by that stage. And I was like, oh, God, I'm never having ABS again. But I couldn't have changed my tune more by now.
I don't ride much on the road, but I did have a 2016 RS V4 for a while, and I took it to Fontana, and that ABS just made me miss corner after corner after corner. I was so pissed, and I never actually rode that bike on the road, but I do have a new bike coming that is for road use, and it does have an ABS, so we'll see how that does.
Man, look, ABS is there to stop you from screwing up. So a lot of the time, you want to use electronics as least as possible. It doesn't matter whether it's traction control, wheelie control, ABS, whatever it is. Like, if you are at the point where you are needing ABS in anything other than an emergency situation, you should probably go get some rider training.
I did. It didn't help.
Yeah.
The next man.
I'm still not sold on the racetrack stuff either. But
I'm
sure the new. I'm talking about the 2012 Diavel and the 2013 or 14 Panigale, but the new ones I'm sure are a ton better.
Yeah, they're massive difference compared to what they were. I mean, even your RSV4, it would be much better since then. Huge difference.
I think it's good that Ducatis have ABS, especially your Ducatis in the bill. because of the oil leaks. So,
oil leaks go backwards, not forward.
Well, they got ABS on the rear too.
I have to say I've been pretty lucky. Javel, never a problem. The Panigale had some head gasket leak, fixed under warranty. That was like 8 years ago. Never had a problem since.
I heard the new Gucci's leak too. Those V100s. So yeah, I spent too much time in Italy over there.
It's an Italian feature.
Yeah, it's an Italian feature. Next manufacturer.
And British.
British. The next manufacturer is Honda. Honda has a slew of new motorcycles, and you said we're getting almost none of them.
Pretty much. Yeah.
So first of all, why? Second of all, if we can just do a little overview of each model there and what segment of the population it's meant for.
Well, I mean, if you look at the list, you got NX 500, CB 500 Hornet, CBR 500R, CBR 600RR, CBR 650R, CB 1000 Hornet, new 5-blade, and African Twin. American Honda has not released any data as to what they're bringing in. They have only done things like returning models for this year, whatever those are. If you have a look at like what all the major publications have covered as well, most of them are only focused on the if they were to look at stuff that wasn't coming into America just yet, on the new CBR 1000RR RSP and the new CBR 600RR. I would be very, very surprised if the 600RR ever gets to America. It's not a ground up rejob or anything like that. It's just a thing for them to be able to keep selling it in Europe. Whereas the Fireblade, that will come in, no doubt. It might still come in. But from what I was told from having a chat with the guys at American Honda, they weren't planning to bring it in next year. So if it does come in, it'll probably be 2025.
Do we know the numbers of how many Fireblades they sold so far?
I don't know. I can tell you.
Okay.
I think
the Fireblade is a beautiful motorcycle. Like, it is so well put together. I mean, it is typical Honda build quality. Like, it's a gorgeous, gorgeous bike, and they're really, really well made. But they also have a lot of those foibles where, like, if you ever looked at club racing, where you got to unlock all these various things to make them go quick. And I mean, if you look at Jeff May earlier this year and last year, he was the only one with a CBR 1000 in any big bike class on a national level that was doing anything. So it's a bit of a shame that Honda kind of paints themselves into a corner like that. It's their own fault, honestly, and it's a thing that HRC have been doing now for decades, where if you're lucky enough back in the day to buy an RC45, things came to America with 100 horsepower. And, the World Superbikes were pumping out 160, so you had to buy the HRC kit to make them work. And that's the same as what it is with the current CBR 1000s. That's why you never see any of them in club racing.
Yeah, and look at who won. Look at who won Superstock in Motor America. The GSXR 1000, right?
Yeah. There you go. He's still Hayden Gillum, man. He's fighting a good fight.
And
they're not doing much in World Superbike with a Fireblade, so
no,
that doesn't get anybody excited.
It was a nice cushy couch for Batista for a year. While he was still working his whatever he had with Ducati.
The bench.
So it was his bench, that bike.
Yeah, pretty much. I bet you Caddy's a bit pissed that they told Alvaro didn't have a seat. They probably would have won 4 championships by now.
Yeah. So here's our plea to Honda: bring the Fireblade.
Yeah. I'd like to see I'd love to see the CBR 600. Honestly, I think they still have something to offer. But look, they are very old. Let's be honest. They're not the spring chickens that they used to be, even if it is all dressed up and new. A bit like the Kawasaki ZX6. I tested that. That's new for this year, and I tested that a couple of months ago. And yeah, it's got new bodywork, which looks great. Like it's really good looking now. And I've been told by a certain team owner in Moto America that it's lucky that that people haven't figured out how to make the ZX6 work, because it's the best super sport bike according to this one particular team owner, who I won't name. And he's so it's good to see Kawasaki have got this thing again. But if people, sorry to jump ahead to Kawasaki, but if people think they're getting more with their ZX6, they are unfortunately mistaken, because you're actually getting less with your 636, because you've got they call it different lift and different duration camshafts, which is code for less lift, less duration camshafts, which means less air going into the combustion chamber, which means less fuel being burned, which means less horsepower. And that's it's retuned. It's got a little bit more, a little bit more mid-range or whatever. But yeah, overall, you get less for your ZX6 than you did last year, which is a bit of a bummer. But on the flip side, it allows them to keep selling the bike in North America. So got to take the good with the bad.
Hey, if you need more power, take it to Chuck.
Exactly. Take it to Chuck. He'll fix it right up for you.
Yeah. So help us make sense a little bit of this. I'm throwing another tangent here. Like, manufacturers seem to have very different views of the market. Some, like Yamaha, canceled the 600 completely. Others kept them around. Some doubled down. Aprilia comes up with a 600 like out of the blue, and Ducati's doubling down on their mid range is in 900 or 950. You can have the smallest CC you can get. It doesn't seem like anybody agrees what direction the market's taking in terms of kind of bike displacement.
I think all the manufacturers got into a room together and took a bunch of mushrooms and then went their own ways. The fact
that would explain it, actually.
Yeah.
You know what? One of the sales tactics is your product shouldn't be. Nobody should be able to compare your product to another product, right?
Well, it's funny this, because when we were at that ZX6 launch, I asked, because I was just praying that they were going to bring out a new ZX7R or ZX7RR, especially considering now the way the Super Sport rules are going. And one of the guys, actually, Troth Long, who's one of the product guys at Kawasaki, made a good point about it. I mean, it didn't allay my disappointment that it wasn't 750, but he said, look, when you look at something like the motocross scene, for example, everything, if you painted all those bikes black, 450 or 250 motocross bike, most people couldn't tell what they are. And he's dead right. Like, I sure as hell couldn't. Like, maybe Ryan Nitzen, who's our dirt editor at Cycle News, could, but I sure as shit couldn't. Whereas now, the supersport market is kind of the most exciting market out there. It's certainly the biggest pain in the ass as far as balancing rules go for people like Moto America and CVMA and all these people. I mean, CVMA just defaults to Moto America anyway. But nowadays you have they're all supposed supersport bikes. You have 636 Kawasaki, 750 Suzuki, you've got 800 MV, you've got a 76 whatever it is, 765 Triumph, you got 950 bloody Ducati, you've got a 947cc KTM Duke, which will, mark my words, may be the platform for the new supersport bike. I mean, you could technically take that Duke now and throw some fairings on it and, do it like what Triumph does. I mean, Triumph doesn't make a Daytona anymore, but there's street triples being raced in the British Supersport Championship. I mean, hey, it won the Daytona 200 a couple of years ago. So you could technically take that. I don't see why you couldn't take it unless Moto America says you can't homologate the bike, that's a whole other argument. But the way it is now, it is pretty confusing, no doubt. It's not like it was back in the day where you had 600 4s and 750 twins for Supersport. But you got to change with the times, I think it's actually kind of good that there are such different motorcycles within the same so-called space. I mean, it's a lot like, sports cars now. Like, there's very few two sports cars that are the same in terms of their engine capacity or their electronics package or whatever it is.
Right.
So I think it's kind of good that they're doing it. At least it gives the customer a lot more choice than I can either have a 604 from 4 manufacturers or I can have a 750 twin from 2 manufacturers. That's all I get. Whereas now I can go from 600 to basically 1,000, and it'd still be so-called a middleweight bike.
Yeah.
The middleweight doesn't make sense anymore.
It's a pretty redundant.
400 to 1,000.
Yeah, it's a pretty redundant term now, middleweight. I don't know what they're going to call it.
Sorry, guys.
It is interesting to watch, but sometimes I'll sit at home and I'll watch a race, and I'm going to go, damn, those Ducatis, they always cheat. Right? What are they doing with a leader bike against an R6?
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem. And honestly, that was how it was back in the early days of Superbike. When the 916 came out, a year later it was 955, and then it gradually grew and grew until it got to 996, and they just kept making it faster while everyone else had to stay at 754s. It's not like they were all of a sudden racing 821cc ZX7s. So it is unfortunate, but that's up to the powers that be to be able to regulate them in the right way. And I know the guys at Motor America pretty well, and I know the job that they have, and it's not an easy one because the lines of getting those things spot on is so small. The Ducati is the fastest bike, to be honest. Like, it can pump out 150 horsepower. It's the biggest capacity bike. It should be the fastest bike. So trying to make that level where it can still race against an R6, it's pretty tough. But they seem to be doing a pretty good job of it, but you're always going to piss somebody off. Like, unless you're racing spec racing, with same tires, same engine, same chassis, someone's always going to go home annoyed.
Yeah, and they also have popularity to think about. So if Ducati is not on the grid, what is it going to do to Ducati fans? Are they going to want to watch those races?
Well, I mean, Moto America is just bagging. It's just bagging. Every Moto America is just putting everything on baggers. So, that's their golden goose at the moment.
Yeah,
it's a fun category.
I would, if I was in their shoes, I would do the same thing. Whatever it takes to keep that business going and thrive and get the most amount of audience.
Also too, you've got 2 manufacturers that have. I mean, really, if you actually look at the brass tacks of it all, the Bagger Championship is actually the only factory Ducati championship, in America, because
Indian and Harley.
The Attack Performance team is not a factory team. The Ducati team is not a factory team. They're factory supported. The new Rahal team, that's not a factory team. The M4 team, that's not a factory team. It's a bit like British Superbike. There's no factory team to British Superbike either. They're all factory supported, but they're not quote unquote factory teams. Whereas the Baggers Championship, Harley Davidson is a factory team, Indian is a factory team, and then you've got trickles down from there.
You know why? Because those are American companies. If American companies are going to start making sport bikes, then we're going to see those in Moto America as factory teams.
Yeah, I don't think you'll ever see a factory sport bike Indian or a Harley Davidson.
I didn't say Indian. I said.
Or the other one.
I said someone's going to open a factory over here, and then they're going to start making sport bikes.
They've already got one. They've got ABR.
Yeah, they restarted.
Yeah.
They're still alive, I should say.
Yeah, exactly. They're still back from the dead for the 900th time.
Is it still selling the old inventory from 2006?
Yeah, I think so. But they do have a couple of nice bikes. Like, there's the new the Cruiser that was developed with Roland Sands, 180 horsepower Cruiser, like the Cali looking Cruiser thingy. Good looking bike, actually. Like, I went to the launch of that earlier in the year. I was like, that's a nice looking thing. And yeah, they've got the new, I don't know if it's the Hammerhead or whatever it's called, but it's the reimagined version, shall we say, of the old EBR superbike that Corey West and all those guys used to ride.
Yeah. I mean, the cruisers is a big market. That's the market in the US in large number. That's why I like the bagger category. I mean, can you imagine just the aftermarket parts? The guy who sets the suspension or the chassis stabilizers or shorter bags or anything like that. It's a
Yeah, I mean,
staggering market.
it's huge. I mean, like I rode Tyler O'Hara's bike and Jeremy Williams' bike at the beginning of the year, and oh man, like I mean, I was teammates with those guys last year in Roland's team in the Hooligan Championship. I had no idea how much of an animal those things are to ride. Like the speed at which those guys ride those things, like normal people don't appreciate just how wild that is. Like when you're doing 4 seconds, 5 seconds a lap slower than Jake Gagne at Laguna Seca on a freaking bagger, that's nuts. That is nuts. So, yeah, my respect for those guys went through the roof after riding those bikes. I was like, holy shit, man, these guys are friggin' hauling on these things.
And you can see them when they're unsettling coming out of the turns. I'm like, I can't believe half the time how they stay on these bikes.
Well, there's just, you think the amount of inertia that comes with a 600-pound motorcycle all sitting on those tires. Like you see Bobby Fong ride that thing. I mean, it looks like the rear wheel's trying to overtake the front wheel at any given opportunity. And he keeps the thing upright. But I mean, poor old Bobby, he probably should have won about 3 or 4 races this year if the thing held together. But they are hand grenades too, you know, like you are, there's no one gets to the season unscathed without serious mechanicals. And you very rarely see that in top flight superbike races and things like that, because they're just doing stuff they're not designed to do. Like it's just the end result of it. But hey, it makes those 3-lap bloody dash for cash things, man, that's the best race of the weekend.
Hey, Jeremy McWilliams is a fast old man, isn't he?
Oh, he's an animal. He is an absolute beast of a guy. Like, I mean, that dude, I say if Zemke could ride a fridge better quickly, so could he. And he's tough as nails, that dude. Like, I don't know if you saw the photo of his back after his crash at Coda this year, where he got high side on the last lap.
Yeah.
Like, that makes me wince, that photo. Like, his entire back is just, it looks like he's just been hit by a board that's as big as he is. Oh. And then he got back on and kept riding.
Yeah.
Jesus.
How old is he? 50-something?
59 or 58 or something. I mean, he's the only one that's holding Tyler O'Hara to account, and he's on the same bike. So, I mean, I remember back when Jeremy was racing 500 GPs back in 1993. Wayne Rainey was still racing back then.
Yeah, I remember that. Not that I'm old or anything, because I'm only 22.
Age is just a number.
Exactly. Yeah, age is just a number. Well, who said that? They're lying.
I just did.
Oh.
Yeah, no, we feel it every day. But so, do you think we'll ever see the baggers in club racing? That would be fun.
I saw them already.
Yeah, they got them at Chuckwalla.
Yeah, I saw them already.
Oh, they're doing well. I've seen them on the track, but as a category.
Yeah, well, it's what is it, American V Twin that they're racing?
Yeah, they're testing. They're mainly testing it for Motor America. But I saw them at Weir, I think, in Vegas. And they were going up against, I don't know how that even happened, against an SV650. And every corner, the SV would brake harder, pass them at the entrance, and every exit, they would just power right out. And and you know, riding that SV650 was probably super frustrating, because you did all that work and all of a sudden they just power out and disappear. But you know, that's racing. Life is unfair. Kawasaki's got an entire range.
We miss Yamaha out of that.
Oh, didn't we miss Yamaha? Oh, I'm sorry. The MT-09 SP, which is one of the most interesting looking. It's not a phrase you want to say on girl, but on a motorcycle, it's interesting looking. The MT-09 SP.
Yeah. So that's pretty. I guess you could say it's new, but like it's a styling exercise. But it's a good looking thing. I think I mean, if you've ever ridden one of those bikes, you'll know how good they are. I mean, they're one of the best value bikes on the market and have been since they came out. Excellent bikes. So it's good to see they still just give it a little tweak here and there. It looks a fair bit better than what the old one used to, I think. I think there's a few that they've got Brembo style calipers on it. I mean, the suspension, I think, is basically the same. You've got a few new electronics here and there. I mean, the whole like connectivity of phones and all that shit to motorcycles just drives me mad. Like, I don't know why I would ever want to have my phone connected. All I want to do is, if I'm going to have any connectivity, it's to put music in my helmet via Bluetooth, and that's it.
Yeah, leave me alone. I'm riding.
Exactly. Leave me alone. That's why I go. That's why I have a motorbike in the first place. But it's a good looking bike. It's sort of modernized the look a little bit more. It's a real shame that we're not getting that. The MT, what is it? Is the XSR 900 GP? That's cool.
The sports one.
Are we not getting it? Why not? This is one of the best looking bikes I've seen this year.
Yep, and it's criminal that we're not getting it because that color scheme came because of Kenny Roberts and Wayne Rainey.
Right.
Yeah.
Like Marlboro Yamahas, and you could argue that it started before with Giacomo Agostini and Eddie Lawson, but really it was idolized. Roberts was the very first guy to ever run in a Marlboro paint scheme in '83 with Eddie, but everyone remembers the Marlboro Yamahas of Wayne Rainey and John Kaczynski and Luca Catalora and all that kind of stuff. That was the glory years. So the fact it's not coming here is a real shame.
Yeah, it made no sense to me. I don't understand the decision. We're a good market for it. It has great sentimental value to Americans. It's a great bike.
Yeah. I mean, you can name the laundry list of reasons why it should come, but unfortunately not.
Yeah. You think that'll change?
No, maybe if there's enough demand, maybe it might, but I doubt it. I mean, this goes into this argument we were talking about off air about how many bikes don't arrive to America, and this is not a new problem. This has been this way for decades. So it's
right.
I think you
it's
said
a shame.
I think you said the word demand, and there's something called demand generation, and motorcycle companies, especially in the US, should start looking into demand generation. If you can't sell enough units of your product, how do you create more demand for that product?
Well, it's funny because Ducati has never subscribed to this theory. And if you look at their lineup, we get everything that Ducati makes, aside from maybe one or two, but I can't even think of what they are. But for the most part, we get every one of the Ducatis. So Ducati, especially too, when you're talking about road bikes, Ducati is a street bike company. They are producing their motocross bike in a couple of years and whatever. But they are a street bike company, so they have more motorcycles on the street than most of the other manufacturers. Especially I think they've got more than Yamaha. They've definitely got more than KTM. You can kind of go from there. But we get most of them, so they think it's good enough. I don't understand why the rest of them don't turn up. It's the only people who lose out is the consumer. There's enough people with enough money in this country where they're like, yeah, cool, I want it. Even if it was couple of $1,000 extra for a paint job, it looks so damn cool. But you're like, yeah, of course, whatever, I'll pay for it. It's all good. So, yeah, but unfortunately, it's been a problem that we've experienced for many, many years in this country.
Yeah, especially when a bike is a cross-platform where, a lot of the technical or parts and technician training and so on can be leveraged, as opposed to something that's completely new and exotic, and now you got to train the dealers and have specific parts and all these things. I mean, it solves a lot of problems, and they went the other way.
Yeah.
So we got two requests, right? The Fireblade with a race kit, proper race kit, and then the XS.
The XS,
that would be at the top of my list so far for sure.
And the last one from Yamaha that's new that we're also not getting is the Tenere 700 Explorer.
Yeah, new Tenere 700 Explorer. Yeah, so that like the travel version of their of their bike, which if you've never ridden a Tenere 700 and you like adventure bikes, I would highly suggest to do so because it is a fantastic bike. So not its massive change, little bodywork styling things here and there, but yeah, it's not a huge thing. It's not something that you couldn't build yourself pretty easily, put it that way.
And that bike, it's older than people think. They've been teasing that thing forever, and then they finally started selling it. And it's one of those things that I thought was a classic marketing mistake of creating that buzz, that demand generation, and then not capitalizing on it on time. And it's all in the timing. So when you're showing a motorcycle, get me all excited, that looks like a Perry Dakar motorcycle. Oh, it's going to be available in 3 years.
Yeah.
Why are you showing it to me now?
Man, it is. I couldn't tell you why they do it. I really don't know. Whether it's the thing of having to get through emissions laws and design rules and all the stuff required to sell a motorcycle in America. Honestly, I don't know. But I do remember being intensely frustrated. And I wasn't even buying them. I was just testing them. But like that at the time, when that bike came out, that was when when it was announced, I should say, that was when this mid-size adventure segment really started to get a bit of steam. You know, everyone before that was like big GS, big KTMs, big Super Tenere Yamahas, these tanks off-road. And then it was when, like KTM came out with the 790 Adventure, when the smaller Tiger 800s, things like that. Like when these bikes came, people realized they didn't need these gigantic bikes. And this Yamaha had the perfect engine for it. They had the bike made. When we saw the bike, this is the thing. We saw the bike in 2015. That means the thing was in development for 3 years prior to that. So it really took them from the time they really started developing it, which was about 2012, 2013. It took them bloody 5 years for it to reach America. It took 2 years to reach everywhere else. So, I don't know. Couldn't tell you why. It's bloody frustrating, but it is the way it is.
At least it's a great bike, right?
It is. It's awesome. It's a fantastic bike. I mean, if you had to go out and if you had whatever it is, 10 grand, and you had to buy an adventure bike, that is the one you buy. Like, it's basic. It doesn't have, proper traction control. It doesn't have proper, electronics in it or anything. It does not need it. It is a really good base bike. Suspension's a bit plush and a bit wallowy and things like that, but you can fix all that stuff. It's got all the right reinforcement points on it. You can crash the thing and know it's not going to explode into flames. The great thing about the lack of electronics is that, you can go to the middle of absolutely bloody nowhere in theory that you're probably going to be able to make it back. There's nothing terribly advanced about it. It's a really, really good engine. It's got just the right amount of power. The throttle response is good. It sounds awesome with an exhaust on it. Looks bitchin'. Like, dude, they're such good bikes, those things.
And it's a great category. I mean, I never understood why you'd want to dig up a 1200cc multistrada from the dust or a hill in the desert that's going to weigh a ton. It's too heavy. It's harder to maneuver when you actually should go lighter weight.
That's not it.
Well, you got just as far.
Yeah, but that's not it, Nabil. You buy that 1200 multistrada and then you put some dust on it. And you cruise over to Starbucks with a lot of stickers and, pretend you've been all over the world on that thing.
Well, I mean, on that note too, that's where the things are better. I mean, there's no doubt that like a 1200 multistrada is way better as far as touring long miles and that goes, and then a little bit of dirt roads and things like that. Like, yeah, take the multistrada. It's much more comfortable, better wind protection, better everything. But yeah, if you are going to go and do actual adventure riding where you go down Baja, where you rip across bloody deserts in Africa or whatever it is that you want to do, then yeah, get something that you're not going to have to screw with too much. And as you say, less weight. Less weight in an adventure bike is always preferable.
Absolutely, yeah. Unless you're Petrucci. Then you can do whatever with a fridge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that guy's a whole different level.
Should have stayed another year.
Yeah. You'll probably go back at the end of it, I would say, and then I reckon he'll get back into it, but he might have missed the boat. Who knows?
Look, we're 2 for 2, right? We had 2 Ducati guys come over, tried 1 year. One of them, I don't think was even on the podium. And then they get offers from World Superbike and they go back. Stay around.
Yeah, well,
stick around another year. See what you can do. But
I think there's probably a financial reward in there at some point. I mean, that was Ducati's problem in that they were getting these one year riders, which I think they wanted to have the prestige of having an international rider, but having someone like Josh Heron on the bike who knows the place back to front, that's the right way to do it. And Xavi Forres, I mean, man, if that boy gets a Superbike next year, which he bloody should, if he gets a Superbike next year, he is going to be right there. You saw how quickly he adapted this year. And Xavi wants to make this a full-time. I don't know if he actually wants to move full-time to the States. Like I think he did the last 6 months out here or so. He's got a little girl now, and so he's back and forth to Spain a fair bit. But I do a lot of work with Ducati in Moto America, and spoken to Xavi at length a number of times, and he was like, "Yeah, I've done my time in World Superbike, I've done my British Superbike, I've done MotoGP. Just want to go and have a bit of fun." And coincidentally, he told me point blank, he goes, "I want to finish my racing career on a bagger." And I was like, "That's pretty damn cool." So I wouldn't mind betting that he goes and wins if he gets a Superbike, I'm going to throw $100 down somewhere that he wins the championship on it, and then pisses off and goes and gets a paycheck to go ride baggers.
Nice.
Would be fun to see.
All right, Kawasaki. Kawasaki are always crazy. So start with a Z125. Is that like a Grom? The new Grom competitor?
Okay, so let me tell you something about Kawasaki right away. Kawasaki USA is not releasing the models that are coming to America until January.
Okay.
They wouldn't confirm or deny what is coming and what isn't coming. Like I was on the phone to them all night, the morning. Okay, what are we getting? What are we getting? Because the big thing is, at least on the list that I can see, that I think is going to make the biggest impact is the fact that Ninja is now at 500. Little 400 is now at 500. But again, you see that gradual creep up in terms of capacities. ZX6 we've already spoken about. The Z7 hybrid, I haven't ridden that thing. I know that they had a launch of it in Spain a few weeks ago, so interested to see how that works. Don't know enough about it to comment on it, to be honest. ZX4RR, if that thing comes out with a few little bits and pieces, that'll be fun, because I rode Chuck Graves's heavily breathed on 400 at Streets of Willow a couple of months ago, and Jesus, that was fun.
I saw the video on YouTube.
That was a laugh, man. I haven't had that much fun on a bike in a long time.
Yeah, it looked like you came out on cold tires, and within half a lap, you were already passing people.
It was so easy to ride. I mean, it's stiff as a board, which is typical Chuck. He's race bike to the core. But take a look, if you're softening it up a little bit, it's fine. But man, that thing had Dunlop Q5s on it. It was the first time I'd ridden on Dunlop Q5s, and I've, as everybody knows, I've been Pirelli guy for so many years, and then I got on these Q5s, like, man, these are really good tires. Like Dunlop did a really, really good job with those tires, and that tire, the tire on that bike, I think it done 5 track days already. So shows how much you can get out of it. I mean, look, $26,000 for one of those things. It's a lot of bikes are $26,000, and don't know how many people are going to be throwing that in the 400, but it is a insanely fun thing that Chuck had built. And but the ZX4 as a base model itself is a really, really good bike. It's very cramped though. It's very short, tiny, and not quite difficult to ride. So difficult to tuck in if you're over 6 foot. But a really, really good bike. The series to watch actually next year, which is going to be really, really cool, is the British Superbike Championship. It's got a ZX4 one make championship. that runs alongside at every round next year. And I've already spoken to a couple of people in Moto America. I'm like, so when are we going to do that? Because that's what I think we're missing, is a one-make series like that. The best championship, I still think the best championship we've had for a long time was that RC390 Cup a few years ago, where they were all on the same bikes. I guess you could almost argue that the Junior Cup is that anyway, because everyone's on Kawasaki 400s anyway. But it was cool to see them all on exactly one make of bike and just go for it. So I hope in a few years' time we'll see a new ZX4 Cup, but we'll see.
So when are they gonna hire a designer? Because that air scoop above the headlights is just, I don't think that's how God intended bikes to be done.
Yeah, they just decided to flip it.
You just insulted someone in Japan.
I mean, what kind of idea was that? It just does not look good. I try to get myself used to it, and I'm like, okay, they're good bikes. Don't be like this. And
hey, look, if you're looking at the front end of that while you're riding, then you're probably doing it wrong.
Or you're doing a stand-up wheelie.
Yeah.
Right.
In Japan, engineers come first and designers come second. Or sometimes not at all.
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
KTM.
I have to say, Yamaha did a good job with the 600 at the time and the R1. That was good design.
The R1 was gorgeous.
Beautiful bikes.
Yeah, I had a 2004 R1. It was gorgeous.
Yeah. Right.
KTM 990. They just keep coming up with those weird numbers and weird shapes. I'm not going to say anything bad about KTM because Nabil's got one. But
I love KTMs. Always loved them. I think
exactly, because they're great motorcycles, and the 390s,
beautifully ugly.
The 390s, especially. I mean, the engine just lasts forever, like all day.
Yeah, they're great bikes. I mean, it's incredible when you consider. It's incredible when you consider the leap that those things have made. That KTM as a street bike brand in general, how good they've gotten in the last 5 years. I mean, like 390s aside, I mean, they were, 390s were just ring to death, so they just kind of fell apart around you. But like the bikes like the 790, the 890, the 1290, I mean, like I'd defy anybody to hop on a 1290 and not come back just going, man, that was great. They're just big, stupid wheelie machines. They're awesome fun. But the new 990 is not actually, I mean, yeah, it is very different. Let me say, but I was going to say, it doesn't actually produce much more power than the old 890 does. And it's not 990, it's 947cc. So because I was just on the phone yesterday to the guys at Kramer in North Dakota, who obviously are running 890s in their new 890RR, which is by far the best motorcycle you can buy if you like track riding. But that's just me. The 890RR and the thing pumps out like 138 horsepower, but it's got titanium rods, pistons, CNC heads, and whatever. But whereas the new 990 is a top to bottom rebuild, different in a way, in that it basically, but it still produces pretty much the same horsepower, but it does it with less emissions. So again, this is why they keep getting bigger every time. It's emissions. It's not because they want to build a 990. It's they have to build a 990 to be able to get these things through. So Euro 5 dictates everything that KTM does, and no doubt they will have been briefed on what the next version of it is, Euro 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, 42. They'll probably have this thing built to the next 3 iterations of it, and then after that, it'll probably be a 1090 or whatever it is. I don't know. But that's the reason that the 990 exists. It doesn't exist because they didn't like the 890. It's just to get through emissions. And
we get the benefit when we put that electronics kit on it and the exhaust, we just get more power. Yeah.
I mean, like that 890 Duke, especially the 890 Duke R, far out, that's cool. Like that's absolutely one of my favorite bikes you can buy. Like I rode it, I think a year and a half ago or something or other, and I just, this thing's so cool. Like it sounds awesome. It's light, it's nimble, it brakes so well. Like it turns great. It's got enough horsepower, 120 horsepower, whatever it is. That's more than enough, especially for a street bike. See, if you can pull stand-up wheelies for the next 5 miles on one of those things, no worries. And I mean, it's different to something like a 1290, which is going to become a 1390 for next year. Which coincidentally, it's interesting that we haven't seen that from KTM. But I think what's going to happen is it's going to end up being a 2025 model that's going to get released early. That's what I'm hearing at least. But yeah, the 990s, the 890s are such a good bike, and that's the other thing. Just because this new 990s come out, don't think the old 890 is no good. It is just as good as it always was. It's such a great bike, and they're going to be cheaper now because the 990s coming in.
They're still selling the 790, right?
Yeah, but that's lower spec suspension and bits and pieces.
Okay. Did they update the 890 engine? Because then in the 23 KTM RC8C, they put a different engine with I think it has titanium rods and some other modification that cranks another like 8 or 10 horsepower.
Yeah, the RC8C. Yeah, the RC8C has got the same motor as the 890 RR Kramer. It's got titanium rods, titanium forged piston, CNC heads, titanium inlet and exhaust valves, different cams, higher lift, longer duration cams, different intake, same crank, same gearbox as an 890, as a base model 890. Although you can, with the RC8C and the 8RR, you can buy a Nova close ratio gearbox. They're racing at the TT and sidecar class, also the British Super Sport Championship where they have the GP2 racing. They are all, you can run the close ratio box and that stuff. So if you really want to, which that's the weak point of the bike is of the RC8C and the 890 RR is the gearbox. Everything else is so built up. I mean, when we rode it at a race to Barber Vintage Festival a couple of weeks ago, the new 890 RR Kramer, we geared it so that we didn't use 6th gear because the gearbox, the 6th gear is basically an overdrive. So we only used, I think we didn't even get out of 4th gear, probably enough. Like we gear it right because it has so much torque that you don't need to rev the thing to the moon. So, which was actually a lot of fun because it's less work for the rider. But yeah, they are a base model 890 engine, but heavily breathed upon for those road bikes.
Okay, so they did change the internals. I thought it was a stock engine that they stock engine.
No, the old 890R Kramer, the first edition 890R Kramer, that's a stock engine.
Got it. So what's the deal with KTM and fairings? I mean, they killed the RC8R 10 years ago, and they're like, we're not doing this anymore, except for the RC8C. I mean, you almost want to take a 1290 Duke and put a fairing on it and make it a race bike.
Yeah, I think just their hand was forced more than anything, especially when you're building a very, very competitive MotoGP bike. And then people are like, well, why haven't they got any sports bikes? I can understand them not producing a super bike. Like, they already have a MotoGP bike. So that's cool. It's almost like Kawasaki not producing a MotoGP bike anymore, but they have a super bike. So I can see that style of thinking, but you also have a RC 390, which is a sports bike. So where do they go? If you're a sports bike guy and you don't want to have a naked bike, what are you going to do? So, in the next couple of years, you will see that super sport bike come out. I know they're working on it. They've been working on it for a long time. This new 990 is going to be out this year, and then it's probably going to be the next year. I've seen spy photos of this thing for the last 2 years. So that'll come out, and that'll at least give an area for the riders to be able to stay within the KTM fold. But it is strange. Yeah, I don't understand why they got rid of the RC8R. I mean, like, that chassis was one of the best superbike chassis built in the last 20 years. Engine was a shitbox, but the actual chassis itself was fantastic. Like, if they put the 1290 motor in that, holy smokes! But you need to change a lot of things. You couldn't run that gearbox. You'd have to change a bunch of stuff. But like, that's the one problem with the 1290. It's a big, heavy engine. But there's no reason that you couldn't make it work in a superbike, something like that. Like and chuck it in an RC8R. Oh, yeah, RC8R. Christ, yeah, that's one. Throw it in that chassis, and you'd have a kick-ass bike. I think a few people have actually done it just as like home projects and things like that. But yeah, I do miss riding those bikes because they were cool and different and quirky and look cool and.
I think I heard rumors that their CEO said one time that superbikes are way too dangerous and that's why they're not making them.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Sounds about right.
So
yeah, but I mean, you make it naked 1290. I don't see the difference. You're gonna kill yourself either way.
No, I mean, Christ, I raced those. I raced two of my 4 Pikes Peak bikes were. Actually, no, I raced the 2015, 2017 in 16, 17, and 18 for Pikes Peak. So when the first time I raced Pikes Peak, I had a 15 Super Duke, and we threw like all the power parts at it and everything. And like that thing was an animal. Like I'll tell you, like it had the world's shortest gearing. It was just a freaking monster of a bike. And then we got the 17, and then I raced that in 17 and 18, and then in 19 I jumped on the Aprilia. But like those things were quick as hell. I mean, like Chris Fillmore on that thing in Chuckwalla was doing 48 something. And it's a naked bike. And people were like, "What the hell?" Like it was awesome to watch. So yeah, I don't understand the theory of not running fairies. It's, you make the fastest naked bike in the world. It doesn't make a difference.
You know what I want to see?
Especially if you're investing in a MotoGP bike.
You know what I want to see?
MotoGP team, I should say.
Remember when Ducati sold their MotoGP bike for the road? I forgot. Desmos Adichie, is that what it was?
Desmos Adichie.
Yeah, I want to see.
Well, KTM very nearly did that.
Yeah.
And they pulled the pin on it, which was a real bummer.
Oh. Yeah.
Meaning developing the actual commercial version of a MotoGP bike or just selling their old
No, they were going to build and sell a production, almost like a KTM version of the RC213V S or whatever it is, or the Desmos Adichie. They were going to do that. And that was back in, say, about 2018, 2019 maybe. It was right at the time when the MotoGP project launched. Maybe after the first year or so, they were going to build a production version of it, but that all got squashed.
Too bad. That would be a great bike to have.
Yeah. Good investment piece, that one.
Yeah.
Next one on the list.
Okay, your favorite brand, Gal. New favorite brand, I should say.
Well, I got a phone call from the moving company today that the driver's almost here, but I'm getting my new Bimota. But Bimota all of a sudden produced a crossover, touring, I don't know what to call it, but the new Terra, which has that same, or it looks a little newer version of that Tezzy front suspension, whatever they have going on there.
Yeah.
So what do you know about that bike? Probably not a lot.
Not a lot, other than it's like utterly bonkers because it has the H2 supercharged engine in it. It's basically you can almost look at this as being Bimota's version of an S1000XR, like I was talking about with the what do you call it, GSX SX plus 1000 minus 2, whatever it is that they call it.
Plus.
But yeah, the Tessie, the Terra, I should say. It does look typically garish promoter, out there style. I mean, I personally love the motors. I've always had a soft spot for them, especially like the late 90s, early 2000s promoters, like when Anthony Gobert was racing those things. I just love those bikes. But yeah, I got to say, I don't know enough about this bike. I've only ever seen photos of it. So I'll have to reserve judgment on it. I'm sure it is going to be very exceedingly quick. I'm sure it's going to be equally as a pain in the ass to buy in America.
I know a guy. I know a guy.
Yeah, yeah. So there you go.
His name's Bob. I know a guy.
Right. Well, then I hope that Bob gets out there and gets these things going, because I've only ever seen one promoter for sale in the States, which was at Iconic Motorbikes in Santa Monica, which was the H2 Superbike version, which was just the best sounding bike I think I've ever heard. Far out. That was so cool. And they are such brilliant bikes. But I mean, like with your bike, what'd you get again? What was it?
KB4.
Yeah, the KB4. Like, that's a beautiful bike. Like, it's a really lovely little motorcycle. And that's what these things are, you know, like, promoters are artworks. They always have been. And, you know, if you look at a DB8 promoter, like, I remember when that thing came out and we were testing it back to back with the 1198 Ducati, which it was based off. It, in every way, was a worse motorcycle. Like, in every way, it was a worse motorcycle. But I would have taken the DB8 just because it looked better. Like, it was, the Ducati ran rings around it, but the motor there's just something about them, man. They're just beautiful bikes, and they're just quirky and different. And, you know, you see a guy with a motor, you're like, yeah, all right, I'm in.
Next one is Ducati, and you remember the Supermoto from the 90s? Well, they came up with another one, right? Or just the engine. A single cylinder, and then they stuffed it inside a Supermoto bike, which looks
Hypermotor, yeah.
Which looks pretty good.
Like a fun bike to ride.
Yeah, it looks pretty good.
I rode a regular Hyper with whatever 890 or whatever engine they had in there. 790, I think it was the small one. Probably the most fun bike to ride on the street that I've ever ridden.
Oh yeah,
so this thing must be a blast.
Yeah, this thing, like, unless you have got the self-control of a monk, you're probably going to lose your license on it.
Yeah.
Because if I just got that, I'm switching everything off, and I'm spending as much time on the back wheel, and then on the front wheel, and then the back wheel, and then sliding it into corners, and just acting like a complete buffoon. It's absolutely my style of bike. That, I mean, I second your quote on the Hyper Motard. I had a 950 Hyper Motard and just loved it. Like, God, it was so much fun. And surprisingly useful as well. Not as big a own bike as what it kind of looks. Whereas this thing just looks like, you know, this looks like pouring acid on your driver's license.
Yeah, I think you can get bags for that thing, right?
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
So
I mean, it's interesting.
Commuter
bike. Interesting with this thing is, like, I mean, this is a single that revs to 10,000 RPM, 10,250 RPM, like 77 horsepower they're getting out of this thing. I mean, I when was the last time a single revved to 10,000 RPM? Like that's wild. So it's going to be a very, very popular bike, I think. And it's priced pretty well too. I mean, the base model is 12,995, whereas the RVE edition, that's 14,495. So, you know, obviously you get your little bits and pieces that you get your add-ons and things are there, but it does look bloody good fun. Like, and big old supermoto, very much like the KTM 690 Husqvarna 701, that kind of style. That's kind of who they're going after. And as we all know, KTM and Ducati are the best of friends. So yeah, I think that's the only reason why this bike exists, is so that KTM can put another, so that Ducati can put another one up KTM.
Are you planning comparison in cycle news between those two?
100%.
Okay,
absolutely. As soon as I get them, I'm doing it.
And then for the people that have too much money, I suggest an index fund. But if you're a moron, you can buy the Panigale V4 SP2 30th Anniversario 916, which just means that you're getting a different paint job and a few more carbon parts. Is that what it is?
What do you have against a new set of stickers? I don't understand.
And a new set of stickers?
You know the stupid thing about that motorcycle? it doesn't even look like a 916. Like, if you were to go and buy that thing, I would want the same graphics as a 916. Like, the most iconic looking Ducati of all time. Why couldn't they just have Panigale V4 written like as a, the slant writing that they had for Ducati 916 on the original bike?
Yeah.
And they looked at this and I'm like, it doesn't have anything to do with the 916. It just says 916. I was like, what? What happened?
I don't think Ducati people would actually care. They'll buy it.
They will. They'll buy it. But it is frustrating because it's just like, man, you could have bought back the legend and instead you just stuck a bloody sticker on the side of it.
Yeah, I think they missed the mark too. Absolutely. There's that period has specific Ducati graphics and font and logos.
You know this going to be on YouTube too, right?
That's all right. Well, I mean, he tried.
Okay.
But yeah, it's still though the V4 just out of the box if you wanted to buy a race bike and not do anything to it. It's pretty much out of the box.
You mean like riding it?
Well, yeah, if you wanted a good track bike that needs nothing, a lot of racers will tell you that's as good as they come without spending a ton of money on top of it. Because if you think about it, you buy a R6 and you spend another 15 grand doing stuff to it. By the time you get it right, then the prices start making sense. I don't know about the SP2. Now you're kind of, all these special edition, but like a nice base V4 or V4S, as good as they come. The ZX-10R too, to an extent.
Yeah, the S1000, M1000. I have not ridden the new M1000, obviously, but the S1000 I think is just one of the best bikes out there. I love that thing. I had one of the first generation bikes for about nearly 2 years. I think it was 2016, 17 or so. I had one. I put so many miles on that thing. I just loved it. And we had the latest one, I think it was about a year or two ago at Cycle News. We had it for about 6 months or so. I've always been a big fan of those things. I mean, I grew up in Australia around big naked bikes and things like that. But these things, for me, are the most applicable bikes now out there. And, we go right back to the beginning of the show when we talk about that new GSX Suzuki that's coming out. These bikes now, they can do absolutely everything. And that's why the Multistrada is so good as well, like the Multistrada V4S. My favorite bike, incidentally, but none on the street right now, is a Pikes Peak Multistrada. Like, give me one of those and I'll be happy for the rest of my life. I just think that bike's so good.
You know what? They came up with an RS now,
yeah.
Right? I think I forgot it. I forgot to put it on the list, but they stuck a different engine in there.
Yeah, they did, yeah. Yeah, so that was released before Eichner, though. That was a month or so before Eichner. Yeah, that one's going to be wild. Like, I know Troy Sahan at motorcycle.com's written it, and he was just like, man, this thing's nuts. And, but, back to BMW, it's that those are the Swiss Army bikes now, Swiss Army knife bikes of the motorcycle world. Like, they can do absolutely everything that requires a tar road underneath. You can take it to the track, you can go quick, you can throw bags on it, you can tow it from here to the other side of the country in complete comfort. Like, fantastic bikes. So obviously the M1000 XR is a much more focused bike, carbon fiber bits dripping off the thing. It looks just magnificent. They're going to be really, really cool. I had the M1000R, the naked bike, in here the other week. I had that for about 6 weeks or other, and at least 3 times I came downstairs, and this is a true story, I came downstairs looking for my boy, and he was sitting in the garage on that bike because he loved it so much. And I was like, what the hell? What are you doing? And he's just like, oh, this thing's so cool. And he's like looking at the wings and all this stuff. And so, I mean, obviously, if a 6-year-old is completely obsessed with it, then they're obviously doing something right with those M bikes. But, carbon wheels, all that stuff, man, like, I'm such a sucker for carbon wheels. Like, if anybody out there is thinking about putting a modification on their bike, don't put an exhaust on your bike. Go put some light wheels on it, and that's when you get the street cred.
And then the next bike is iconic, the GS. They made it 1300.
Yep. I just rode that bike over in Spain. Got back from Malaga over a week ago. It's bloody good, gotta say. Like, straight up, hand on heart, it is a really damn good bike. It was, I mean, look, they're always good bikes, but it's extremely different compared to what it was. It's a lot smaller, front to rear, top to bottom. It's a lot more compact. Seat angle's different, the bar position's different, the engine's more compact, the front suspension's completely different, the rear suspension's clear, the whole thing's different. But I guess it's one of those things, it's like same but different. Like, it's all optimized, it's all shrunk down a lot more. The frame is very different. Sheet metal construction frame with a cast aluminum subframe, which has just never been seen before on GSs. It's got that new Evo telelever front suspension where it's done away with a couple of the ball joints and now runs flex plates at the back in between the steering heads, or below the steering head, I should say, which takes out, obviously a lot of weight, a lot of friction. I took that thing up some pretty awful, shaly kind of rocky, crappy roads in Spain, and the thing just trucks so well off-road. On road, they're always really good, and it's not as big a difference on road as it is off-road, in my opinion. The smaller ergonomics will suit more people, I think, because especially when you started looking at things like GS trophies, GS adventures, things like that, they're big bikes. And we rode the standard one and the trophy. There's not that much of a difference between the two of them now. But they're fantastic bikes. The electronics are completely redone. There's just like talk to you for hours on this thing. But this is the way the GS is now going to be for a good while. This 1300 has been in development since end of 2017 is when they started development, and they bought the latest 1250 out in 2018. So they already leapfrogged themselves in terms of the development. It's a really, really, really good bike. Still, they were always one of my favorites. It still is. I can't speak highly enough, but it's awesome.
And they sell a lot of them.
They do. It's that thing of like stereotypes exist for a reason, and it's that many people can't be wrong. Like I rode a GS. The first time I rode a GS, I was 14 in Australia, and I had fun on it back then. It was just when Dad saw I was old enough to be able to stand upright on it. He goes, "Off you go." And I went, "All right, cool." Ripped it around a dirt road for a bit. It's great fun, but yeah, they are such good bikes, so versatile. You do anything on them. More so almost than you can with an XR, but an XR, at least with a GS, you can take it off road. Can't do that with an XR.
Yeah. Next one is the Aprilia RS 457. Now, Aprilia are known for their RSV4s, 1000, 1100, and they're also known for the 125s, the RS two-stroke 125s.
Yep.
And now they stuck something in between.
Yep. Yeah, so they've been interesting for them to be coming out with a 457. I don't really know why that's the way they did it, but I don't know. It's going to be. I mean, look, it's an Aprilia sports motorcycle. It's going to be good. They always are. I can't think of any. I mean, the favorite bike I've ever owned, aside from my Husqvarna Supermoto, was my RS 250 Aprilia back in Australia, the two-stroke. And that's where the company does its best work, is in sports chassis. Always have done. So, you own an RS V4, and the fantastic bike. I raced the Tuono, again, another great bike. I can't lie about it. They're going to be good. I'd be interested to see how it's going to go as far as racing, but with the Ninja now being a 500, whether we get that in America or not, I know that because of Aprilia being in Twins Cup racing, in the States for a number of years, and that being a 660. I don't think they'll have any dramas with getting them in Moto America, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be at least half the pack that's going to jump from a Ninja 400 onto one of these things. So I'm sure it's going to be a really, really good bike. I mean, they're talking, 350 pounds dry for that thing, so you can probably make a 365 ready to go, which not bad. And then when you start taking all the bits and pieces off you need for the street, you might get that thing down to just over 300 pounds ready to rock. So it'll be a hell of a bike.
And if they're going to have a Trofeo version like the 660, it's even going to be better.
Probably they will. I would suggest that. Yeah. It's really tends to do that with most of their sports stuff.
Next one is a sister company for Aprilia, same dash. The Moto Guzzi. The Moto Guzzi Stelvio.
I'm really looking forward to this.
Are they going to launch it in the Stelvio Pass?
I bloody hope so. That'd be great. It's funny, like I actually emailed Shane at Aprilia and I said, "Where are we riding this thing?" He wrote back Venice Beach.
What?
Count me out. I'm not
get out of here. Gotta ride the Stelvio and Stelvio.
yeah, they better be doing it. It's a bloody Stelvio Pass, but who knows? I had a lot of experience on the old Stelvio, the old 1200 Stelvio back in the day. Tank of a bike, like just really big, heavy. Not a bad bike, but just a real gnarly bike kind of thing. Wife's calling me. It was just a big old thing. So in the end, they've done a good job as far as redesigning everything goes, making sure everything is as small as it can be now with the way that motorcycles are going, where there's a lot of wasted space on those old bikes. But it takes a lot of what the V100 Mandello was, same engine and bits and pieces here and there, like different chassis, different drive shaft, but pretty much the same electronics, different ride position and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be a good bike to add. I think that'll be a bit of a surprise.
The next bike is one of Nabil's favorites, if not the favorite, right? You're the MV boy here, Nabil?
Our second favorite brand.
Second favorite brand.
KTM.
Oh, okay. After the KTM. So remember the 90s, the Lucky Strike Kajivas? Well, MV Agusta came up with something similar. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the Lucky Strike logo, but it's got like half of it. What do you think about that new, what's it called? Oriali?
Orioli. So that is, what's the guy's first name? Eddie. So it's named after Eddie Orioli, who is the Italian Dakar racer who won the race 4 times back when it was the real Dakar. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, so usually like the length of Africa kind of stuff. Guy is an absolute off-road legend. But he back in the day, as you say, he rode for Kajiva with Elephant, which was owned by Ducati, but they were sorry, I'm tripping over my own words here. Back then, Ducati was owned by the Castiglione brothers, who then went off and bought MV Agusta. So if you follow along on that bloody Italian comedy that stuff is, but so Eddie Ariella gets his own tribute motorcycle, which he thoroughly deserves. I mean, if you ever see those photos of the Kajiva Elephants back in the day, I mean, man, that was when men were men back then. Like, those are serious bikes. And he's got this thing. It is going to be crazy expensive, probably north of 32 grand, I would think, for a Luxo adventure bike, whatever you want to call it. I've often had a bit of an issue with MV Agusta and their pricing. I think that's an argument for another day. But it should be a good bike. I think they're limited too, actually.
Are they? Nabil, hurry up and put your order in.
I'm actually looking real quick here. Yeah, no, I don't think you want an MV for something where you're going to be 500 miles away from a dealer.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, here we go. Limited to 500 editions.
Wait,
I mean, look, it does look bitchin'. Like it does look very close to what his bike was, like a modern interpretation of what his bike was. Especially when you get silver wheels, like the old 90s style alloy wheels, and looks really, really good. Big, like, exposed tubular subframe and things like that. But yeah, I tend to agree. Probably want to be a bit careful on some of that, but it does cost. It's going to cost so much that most people are going to, if they ride it, they're going to ride it at Starbucks. Let's be honest. But this will be a bit like the MV Tamburini and things like that, where it's like the halo bike, and then there's the trickle down from there onwards. But in 931cc inline triple counter rotating crank like they've had forever, 124 horsepower that MV's claiming out of this thing, and 75 pounds-feet of torque. So pretty good. Not going to set the world on fire as far as KTM adventures and BMW GSs and that kind of stuff go, but that's really selling to the same customer, I don't think, at that point. So it's going to be a nice thing. I'd love to see one. It certainly looks nice, but I think they're more of a showpiece than what you're going to see as a real hard adventure bike.
I mean, it'll probably ride well because they have a compact engine, not very heavy. You can do a shorter wheelbase. I'd be interested in trying it, actually.
It'll be a good bike.
It'll be fun.
Yeah, no doubt. Like it'll be a nice thing. But as you say, do you want to ride one to the middle of nowhere?
What do you think is going to happen to this company? I mean, they keep changing hands. I think KTM put money in recently.
KTM's going to buy it.
Yeah.
KTM's going to buy it outright by the end of 2026. So, and that's not me telling you something that's not already in the public domain. That's the prior self, Stefan Pira, that guy, he knows what he's doing. He wouldn't buy a mini stake in a company unless he had interests in taking the whole thing over to begin with. I mean, there is talk of MV Augusta coming into MotoGP in 2027 when the new rules come through, and there's more. I think there's more truth to that rumor than a lot of people think, because I suppose we're going off a little bit on a tangent here, but if you look back to the Suzuki coming out of MotoGP, there's 2 grid spots available. Dorna wouldn't give their 2 grid spots to KTM to put Husqvarna in there because they knew it was just going to be like a rebadged bloody KTM like they did with Gas. They said it has to be a new manufacturer. So the only people that are even remotely possible as far as coming in as a possibility as a manufacturer is MV Augusta, because they have the money behind it, but they have to do it on their own. And by on their own means not a rebadged KTM RC16. So that's what's going to happen, is that if they come in, it's no guarantee they're going to come in, but you can bet your bottom dollar that within a couple of years, MV Augusta is going to be 100% owned by Pira Mobility Group. It's like Gas is, like Husqvarna is, all that stuff. So Felt bicycles as well, same thing.
Yeah, it'd be great for the brand because right now they have almost no dealer network, and they're good at design.
They do. I mean, MV Augusta, it's a strange one because like they just can't seem to get out of their own way. Like they produce these bikes and they sell them, which is, I find it nuts. Then again, what do I know? I don't have enough money to buy them, but like every bike that they were producing was a limited edition, and almost to a point where a limited edition doesn't become special anymore. So in the end, like, look, I get it. Like, you want to have something cool. I mean, I still think the most beautiful motorcycle I think I've ever seen is that MV Augusta LH44 Lewis Hamilton superbike from about 5-6 years ago. Like,
that was 70 something.
That is stunning.
Was it 70 grand or something like that? 72
something
grand?
like that, yeah. I mean, look, it's just an F4RC.
The red carbon fiber and gold.
Oh,
beautiful bike.
Man, you see one of those things in person, and you're like, oh, that is hot. But that's just an F4RC with a fancy paint job. But shit, I'd buy one if I had the money just to look at it. But they can't keep doing that. You can't just keep making little one-off things. Like, yeah, you can make yourself a premium brand, but I almost look at MV Agusta like maybe a bit like Aston Martin in a way. Like you can kind of draw parallels with them in that regard. They really need to get back to top-level racing, in my opinion, because they were one of the original great companies that went racing and dominated for so long. They need to be back in MotoGP, I think. I think that's the premium racing series. It's a premium brand. It's, you get what I mean. But I really hope they do get their dealer network sorted out, because they do have good products. Like that F4 800 that you've got, awesome bike, like fantastic bike. The, what do you call it, the Brutale 1000s, no thank you, not for me. I think they are way overpriced for what they are. And not just a little bit overpriced. I think they are highway robbery overpriced. Especially when you can go and buy a, V4 SP bloody Street Fighter for 10 grand less. Or not 10 grand, whatever. That has great dealer support, that has better components on it. You can't just bank off the name just because it's an MV Agusta and put 10 grand on it. You've got to give the people value for money. So the base model of that, if they took 10 grand off that Brutale, especially the lower spec one, the one with the higher handlebars, I can't remember if it's the R or the RS. If they took the 10 grand off it, then it becomes a viable option. It's like, yeah, okay, it's a bit more premium than something like any of the Japanese fours, or even a KTM 1290 Super Duke. A little bit different, but you can't go charging $35,000 for this. That's just rude.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. To your point, you should be winning races. I do think they do design very well. If you look at the details of these bikes, I think that's what a lot of people pay for. And you're not going to, it's going to ride pretty much as well as another bike, not that much better. But the detail and the design is unbelievable. And not the F3 and the F4s, but, the special editions. The Brutale has, especially when you go into their special editions too, they got unbelievable design detail that's really pretty to look at.
Yeah, they do a good job. I mean, that CRC design house that they have in Barese, they do a brilliant job of making the things look very nice. And if you look at like that MV Agusta Brutale on a Dragster 800 America, I did the launch of that 6 months ago, or whatever it was. I mean, like brilliant looking bike, awesome looking bike, not the best thing to ride by any stretch of the imagination. But a beautiful looking motorcycle, like far out. Like that's one of the bikes that you would stick it in your living room and just look at it. And that's kind of been MV's thing. They don't produce ugly motorcycles. I mean, the F4, until it stopped being produced, looked pretty much the same as it did from when Tamburini first took the wraps off it in 1996 for the 97 model year. Like it all the way through. They hit the nail on the head so hard that they realized they didn't have to change it. And that's the same thing with a lot of those bikes. They never differ a lot. I mean, like that, and I'm looking at the photo now, that Orioli bike, that's a bloody good looking motorcycle. Like, if they can make the thing when the new one comes, well, when the one that mere mortals can afford to buy and want to go riding, if they make the thing good and they make it reliable and everything, and they have a good deal on network, then yeah, they can be a big player. There's no reason they shouldn't be a big player. They're commanding the kind of money of big players. So you should get this. If you get, you buy the fruit, you should be able to get the bowl that goes with it.
Yeah.
Well said.
I think a part of their initial success with the 750 was the 999. Did that Tamburini came off of designing the 996, and then he went to MV and he did the F4. In the meantime, they hired Pierre Tablage, and he kind of made the 999, and I looked at it and I was like, oh, it went from one of the best looking motorcycles ever to one of the worst motorcycles ever. And
have you seen one of them now though? Like I would take one of those things any day. That's one of the best aging motorcycles ever. I hadn't seen one for years, and then I saw him Barber Vintage Festival a couple of weeks ago. I was like, God damn, that looks good now. Like, I think it looks awesome.
I don't know why people don't like them. That was the first bike that caught my eye in the Ducati lineup. I'm like, oh, what is a Ducati? And I saw this, and I'm like, I got to look at this brand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Beautiful looking thing now. I mean, I think it wasn't successful because it was going up against the best looking bike that's ever been built in a 916. Like, let's be honest, it's, but now it's had time to stand on its own legs. And it's a gorgeous bike, that thing. Like, really lovely.
Okay.
Agreed.
So I'm glad
we've gone around the world here.
Yeah, I'm glad we only did that thing in 1 hour, because we try to keep our podcasts at 1 hour. So I'm glad.
Well on that one. Yeah.
I'm consistently fail.
We always fail.
Well, the problem is we talk to very interesting people that know a lot about the industry because we're lucky and they're generous with their time, and ends up taking forever. And you could have another 2.5 hours on the back of this and keep talking. So,
yeah. Thank you
so much, Rennie, for being so generous with us.
Yeah, thanks for having us on, guys. I really appreciate it. It was a good chat.
And go check out Cycle News on cyclenews.com. You can go, and you guys have, I think, the best format because it's a combination of print and videos. So you can actually go through an online print magazine like you would do on any other publication, but you embed videos in it. So it's not like reading a magazine. It's reading a magazine plus looking at videos, which is
it's kind of an interactive magazine in a way, I guess.
Yeah, which I think is the best online version of consuming motorcycle content that I saw. So
thank you.
Everybody should go. Yeah, everybody should go check out Cycle News, and thank you, Rennie, for your time, and we'll see you in Chuckwalla.
And if Rennie, by the way, goes to TT again, I think we should create a fan club and fly over there with him. And just support from the sidelines.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
Start a GoFundMe and we might talk about it.
There we go.
Thank you guys for listening.